Hi, it's Alaska Granny. It's a wonderful summer day out at Granny Camp, which is my Alaska off-grid cabin. I was out this morning and I found this beautiful mushroom. It's called a fly agaric, or as my daughter says, what did you do to that hamburger bun? She thinks it looks like a sesame seed bun. You can break some of it up into milk, put out a bowl of it, and flies will be attracted to it. They'll fall in and be poisoned and die and drown. Keep track of your pets if you're ever out in the woods and make sure they don't try to chew or sample anything that you don't know if it's an edible or not. What I wanted to actually talk about today was, in an emergency, like we've been having a pandemic, areas are having hurricanes, tornadoes, there's all kinds of things that can go wrong. What are the foods that actually sell out first? What are the foods that disappear first? Because then you can have an idea of, maybe those are items I need to make sure that I have enough of, so that if there is an emergency, I don't have to run to the store. I don't have to be the last one in line to view the empty shelves and be around the crowds of people who are fighting over any last morsel of food. At the beginning of this pandemic, back in, say, March, the first thing that was selling out was water, which surprised me because I always think people already have a supply of water at home. I know I keep water in 1 quart, 2 quart, 5 gallon, and even 55-gallon barrels. I keep plenty of water because you just never know when the water might go out, there'll be a problem, and you need to rely on your stored water to provide for your drinking water and your hygiene and dishwashing uses. If you don't have water stored at home, pick some up at the store or fill up some clean containers and store it yourself. You just want to make sure anything you fill up has just held food. Never put water into something that held cleaners or chemicals. The actual first food that sold out was milk. I was surprised that people were hoarding milk because milk doesn't stay fresh for very long in your refrigerator. And if your power goes out, your milk is going to spoil very quickly. So if you want milk as an option in your food storage, look for some kind of powdered milks, canned milks. My favorite is to have the shelf-stable milk that comes in a carton. I think it's considered double pasteurized, and so it's been pasteurized twice. So it has a very long shelf stable as long as you do not open the carton. It'll stay in your pantry for up to a year. I have stored the cartons of milk in my refrigerator, opened them after 2 years, and the milk was still perfectly good and fresh and easy to use and drink. If you drink milk or use it on your cereal, or it's something you want every day, it's important that you have a supply of milk in a shelf-stable form that will keep you going. I'm not a fan of powdered milk, but I do have some powdered milk that's called Morning Moo because I think that tastes really delicious, but it isn't just milk. It has a few other little ingredients in it, and that's probably why it tastes good. The next food that sells out is bread. Bread also, unless you put it in your freezer, it's not going to last. And if your electricity goes out, the bread in your freezer is days away from being spoiled as well. I like to keep canned bread on hand. The B&M canned bread is a heavy, dense brown bread, and it's really good. It's already baked in the can. You just cut it open, dump it out, and you have 8 thick slices of dark, hearty bread. I'll put a link to a video I made about the B&M bread, how you can use it and what is it for, and you can check out that video if you're interested. Crackers are a great thing to have on hand, and I always fall back to the Alaska favorite, pilot bread. Pilot bread is a cracker that doesn't have any fat in it, and it lasts nearly forever, and it really doesn't break up and crack like other crackers do in the package. The next food that sells out first is meat. We can't always have fresh meat. We can't always keep our freezer full, which there again, if your power goes out, you can lose all the food in your freezer. That's happened to me several times, and it's heartbreaking. I like to have a nice supply of packaged and canned meat in a shelf-stable form. You can get it in cans, you can get it in pouches, you can get jerky. Find the meats that you're willing to eat. There are so many different kinds of meats. Get a variety, but only choose meats that you're actually willing to eat. If you see one that looks interesting, buy just one, take it home and try it. If you like it, you can get more. If you don't like it, you've learned a lesson, and now you can spend your food storage dollars on something you are willing to eat. The next food that sells out is eggs. Eggs can last for quite a while in your refrigerator. Some people like to oil them and have them last for months, but it's a good idea to have some powdered eggs, some kind of packaged eggs, and know a few ways to substitute for eggs in your cooking. Making the substitute is not going to be the same as having an egg for breakfast, but if you want to cook it into breads and different kinds of cooked and baked goods, you can use the substitutes for eggs. The next food that disappeared, coffee. Make sure you have coffee if you're really into it. Coffee doesn't last forever though, but you need to figure out ways to store it if it's something that you like. I don't necessarily drink coffee, but I always keep some on hand. I like tea, so I have a stockpile of tea bags that I store in mason canning jars. Coffee has a little vent on the top. It allows the gases to escape. You can always squeeze it and smell it, and if your aroma isn't there anymore, you probably need to replace your coffee. If you do decide to store green coffee beans, make sure you have a roaster and a grinder so that you can turn your coffee beans into usable coffee. The next food that disappeared, pasta. Pasta is a forever food. You can store it away in an airtight container and it'll stay fresh and good nearly forever. I've eaten pasta that was probably 15 years after I bought it, but I'd stored it away in an airtight container and it was just as good as if I had purchased it that day. But if you're going to store pasta, make sure you're storing foods that go with it. Nobody wants just a bowl of noodles. You'll need some sauces or some canned tomatoes, something to put with it so that your pasta then can become a full meal. The next food that disappeared in an emergency is every kind of canned foods. Canned soups, chilies, stews, all the kinds of open and eat full meals in a can, all kinds of fruits and vegetables, canned sauces, every kind of canned beans. Get an assortment of canned food if you don't already have it. Canned food can last many years in your pantry. You can open a can of food and eat it in almost any situation. You can mix cans together, stir them together with your dried rice, mashed potatoes, your pastas, and make fuller, more complete meals. Try to have canned food in the categories of meals that are already prepared, like ravioli, soup, stew, chili, and a can of fruit and a can of vegetables, so that you have like a category of each variety for as many days as possible. I put together an emergency kit in a duffel bag where I took 30 cans of full meal entree type cans and 30 cans of fruit, 30 cans of vegetables. If you have enough food, it solves the problem of what am I going to eat next. You can go to your stockpile and have something to eat, and it frees up your energy to figure out what to do next in an emergency situation. Look over all the different kinds of foods that disappear first and see if those aren't the things that you saw were missing when you went to the store back at the beginning of this coronavirus COVID pandemic, when we all were told, go home and stay there. If they didn't have food at home, they ran to the store and they scooped up whatever they could get. And probably a lot of people, once they got home, didn't even know why they chose the things they did. They bought things in a panic. If you have enough food at home, you won't be out there racing around with the people who have nothing at home trying to figure out what to do next. You'll know that you have the supplies you need and you can handle whatever the emergency is. The area of Alaska where I live just went back under a quarantine stay at home. They're calling it a reset, and they're not using the same terminology that they did during the first stay-at-home order, but that's exactly what it is. We're supposed to stay at home for the next 4 weeks. I used a lot of the stored foods I had during the first lockdown, the first wave of the COVID coronavirus, but I've been resupplying it because we don't really know what's coming next, and that's why you want to be prepared. Stocking up for emergencies isn't complicated. You just need to think about what do you like to eat, and then get extras of that in a shelf-stable form so that you have what you need no matter what the future holds. If you enjoyed my video, I hope you'll share it with someone else who might like it. Learn more at alaskagranny.com, and please subscribe to the Alaska Granny channel.